Hello again and welcome back. Thank you again to Dr. Jenkins for that wonderful keynote this morning. Next, I'm delighted to introduce our speakers in the first session titled Government Updates. Please join me in welcoming Andrea Lindsey from USDA ERS and her speech, Operation Supplement Safety Ingredient Database, an encyclopedic collection of ingredients. Isabelle Rondeau and Marie-France Veron of Health Canada and their topic of the past, present, and future of the Canadian nutrient file and the nutrition survey system. Natalie Partridge from USDA FNS and her talk on new directions for the USDA's Child Nutrition Database, where we are now. And Kyle Mckillop, USDA ARS, in his presentation on updates on USDA's FoodData Central, current and future approaches to food composition data at the USDA. As a reminder, please drop your questions into the chat as they arise so we can get to as many questions as possible following the speeches. Thank you.
Good morning. Today I will be talking to you about a brand new database that we have, the Operation Supplement Safety Ingredient Database, an encyclopedic collection of ingredients. My name is Andrea Lindsey, and I am the Director of Operation Supplement Safety and a Senior Nutrition Scientist in support of the Consortium for Health and Military Performance, which is a DoD Center of Excellence. I am a Henry M. Jackson Foundation employee. This is my disclosure information that these opinions presented are my own, and I have no financial interest to disclose. This screen lists the co-authors for the abstract that we had accepted, and I just want to thank them all. They work with me on the Operation Supplement Safety program. What I'm going to talk to you today about is very briefly introduce Operation Supplement Safety for those of you who are not familiar with us at OPSS or ops.org, and introduce our new Department of Defense instruction, which we refer to as the DoD, and describe the evolution and development of the OPS ingredient database, which we refer to as OPS ID. There's no shortage of acronyms in the military. And just illustrate the application of OPS ID for you to see the framework. We know that dietary supplement use is considerably higher in the United States Armed Forces compared with civilian populations, with more than 2/3 of service members using them weekly or more, often compared to 50% of the general population. Bodybuilding, energy, or pre-workout, and weight loss dietary supplements are commonly used by military personnel, likely due to their unique occupational demands and body composition requirements. Back in 2011, the ingredient DMAA, which is an amphetamine derivative, emerged in a few popular dietary supplement products. The manufacturers claimed this ingredient was a natural stimulant, but in fact it wasn't. Due to several deaths and many adverse events in the military associated with the use of products with DMAA, in January 2012, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs requested a DoD-wide educational campaign on dietary supplements, and that is how Operation Supplement Safety came about. I want to point out that back in 2012, when we were established, we were an educational campaign. Now we are an established program and the go-to resource in the military. We have many approaches to our education about dietary supplements, and we are the only entity educating on this topic in the military. So we are the single authoritative source for providers, for example, on this topic. And certainly OPSS.org or ops.org is a big piece of this, which includes evidence-based articles, infographic position statements, and other up-to-date information, but we also rely heavily on our social media presence. This slide is showing the recently signed Department of Defense Instruction 6130.06. We refer to this as the DoDI, on the use of dietary supplements in the military. Based on frequency of dietary supplement use by service members and the concerns regarding the potential for adverse events from problematic dietary supplements, an overall DoD policy was needed to minimize risk. So this was recently signed and issued on March 9th, 2022, and is available at ops.org. The DoDI gives us a framework for really implementing the intervention of education. I want to emphasize that we know there is a potential for adverse events from service members taking many dietary supplements that contain ingredients that could be dangerous, which poses a threat to military readiness. While we acknowledge that it is challenging for us to measure any behavior change, we do know that education does bring awareness to this topic. We want service members to be informed users of dietary supplement. The DoDI formalizes Operation Supplement Safety as the go-to program for dietary supplements, and it requires dietary supplement education for service members and providers, and anyone who touches a service member. That includes a health promotion person, clinical dietitian, a fitness trainer, etc. It also mandates adverse event reporting by healthcare providers, and it provides the DoD prohibited dietary supplement ingredient list, which I'm going to show you on the next slide. As mentioned on the previous slide, the DoD provides the DoD prohibited dietary supplement ingredients list. What is the list? Well, the list has been prepared in accordance with the DoD, and it includes controlled substances, other substances on the World Anti-Doping Agency prohibited lists in sections S0 through S5. Also, many drugs that have been found in dietary supplements, and it contains the ingredients on the FDA Dietary Supplement Ingredient Advisory List. So what you're seeing on the screen is just an example of the ingredient DMHA, which is an ingredient not allowed in dietary supplements, and you see the synonyms listed. You also see the links that are available, one from FDA, which outlines why it is not allowed in dietary supplements. We started OpsID back in 2020 when we started working on an app that was going to be the one-stop shop for how to evaluate a product for safety. As a result, we started putting together a database of ingredients, and we realized in doing so that we really needed a rating system for the ingredients. We worked on the app for about a year, and we had to stop work at that time due to change in the IT contract. So I'm going to show you how we developed the ratings, because our work on OpsID continued, and then finally show you a few screenshots of the app as we left it. So how did we come up with our ratings for ingredients? As you see on the screen, green means that we have sufficient evidence of safety and effectiveness with appropriate use in dietary supplements. That means the ingredient that's rated green is not on the DoD prohibited list. And then yellow, from what we can find in our research, use in dietary supplements could result in minor to significant health risks. And an ingredient labeled as yellow is not on the DoD prohibited list of ingredients. If an ingredient is tagged as red, it is prohibited by DoD for use in dietary supplements. We also came up with a category of gray, and that's really because there are ingredients that fall in the gray zone of really not being able to identify any evaluation for risk. or established criteria for prohibited status. Also, if someone has an ingredient that is categorized as gray, they would be able to send an Ask the Expert question to the Operation Supplement Safety team. As I mentioned a minute ago, we are continuing our work on Ops ID, and this became a robust database that currently has roughly 1,400 ingredients and 8,000 synonyms. It's really mind-boggling to us as we uncover all of these ingredients and synonyms. This slide shows some of the data sheet that we use in our research. Everything in the database is evidence-based, and so you can see under database sources that we use some of those databases to identify the ingredient, synonyms, etc. We want to make sure we are very, very careful in tracking the information that we find on a particular ingredient. So we have found these data sheets to be extremely useful to us. This slide is showing a visual example of how ingredients and their synonyms are listed in our database along with their ratings and any specific DoD warnings that we have. Note that you can see for that one ashwagandha that's listed, there's a warning for women who are pregnant and women of childbearing age. So again, this is showing, you can see an ingredient that's tagged as gray, that one andro. We know calcium is going to be a green ingredient, and so forth. With our red prohibited ingredient, there you see that DMHA again, and we've tagged ashwagandha as yellow. I mentioned we are developing an app, and you're seeing some screenshots in the next couple of slides. When we were working on this in 2021, and the app will be named OpsUp, and a user will be able to scan a product with the barcode, and that will be one way to retrieve any notification of potentially prohibited ingredients. And that just gives you sort of where we left off on our planning for this particular app about how to check dietary supplements for potentially problematic ingredients. This screenshot shows an example of what would be retrieved from an ingredient that is categorized as yellow. So that takes us back to Ops ID and tagging ingredients with either the green, yellow, red, gray. So this is just an example, and the screenshot on the right is an example of how a user would be able to search for an ingredient in the app. This screen shows an example of a prohibited ingredient. Some of you may be familiar with ephedra, and you see some synonyms listed. So again, our work on Ops ID is supporting this app and all of that background tagging of ingredients with synonyms and whether or not it is on the World Anti-Doping Agency prohibited list. I also wanted to include that screenshot of the Ask the Expert. I mentioned users will have the option to submit a question to the ops team directly from the app. So where do we go from here? We're going to continue to work on Ops ID, and as we come across new substances or we uncover any new information about an ingredient that's already in Ops ID, we will certainly update it or add new ingredients and rate them according to our rating system. I would assume we will put Ops ID on the Operation Supplement Safety website, but that will most likely take place after we launch the app, which we hope to be in first quarter of 2023. I hope you will all go to ops.org if you haven't already been to our website, and also connect with us on social media. You can see the links at the bottom of the main page of Operation Supplement Safety. And there is my contact information. If you have any comments or questions, I'd love to hear from you. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all today. Thank you.
Hi. In Canada, the Food Composition Reference Database is the Canadian Nutrient File, and it's maintained by Health Canada. My name is Marie-France Véro, and I manage the Canadian Nutrient File. I started to work on the database with Josie Deeks 21 years ago as a dietetic intern, and I have stayed and learned with the group ever since. I find there is so much to learn about food composition, and I still feel like I don't know enough. Our team consists of 5 dietitians. Yes, you heard right. 5 dietitians to manage a huge food database and other projects is not a lot. Here's a picture, awkward, weird picture of myself. Being a mom of 3 kids, there's not a lot of pictures taken of myself. It all started in 1944 as a small printed booklet containing nutrient values, and I have to say that those data were borrowed from the USDA. We wanted to have Canadian data, and slowly, research scientists started to do nutrient analyses. Baby step. In the 1960s, we added some analytical data to the table and started to modify the borrowed data to reflect the regs and what was on the market here in Canada. It's at the end of the 60s that the first computerized version of the database was born. And after the 1971 and 72 survey, the data was made available for those able to use it, but I'm not sure how it was shared. In 1978, nutrients could no longer be added to the database and was reformatted to magnetic tape, but I've never seen those. That's when the Canadian Nutrient File, the CNF, was born. When I joined the team in 2001, we were sending the database to users on CDs, but it was mostly for experienced users as the data was difficult to manipulate. I'm glad there are easier ways to share the data now. The CNF was made available on the web in 2005. Yeah! Users could access it directly on the search engine or download the whole database. I remember being so proud to finally have the CNF on the web. Little did I know that the search interface would still be the same in 2022. Well, it's another thing to add on our long list of things to do. In 2007, our sampling and analysis program for Canada started. We call it SNAPCAN for short. I'll come back to it in a minute. Now, talking about the current situation, the last published version dates from 2015. It contains about 5,800 foods for up to 150 nutrients, and it's in English and in French. I know the slide says 174. It's because we added many fatty acids and other components that have not yet been published. So I'm going to say this. For those that do not manage a database, even though it's been 7 years since we published, a lot of work has been done to improve the data. Listed on the slide here, you can see the food categories that have been added to the CNF since its last publication in 2015. So all of these food categories have been added through the SNAPCAN program and all contain analytical data. Now to talk about SNAPCAN. Well, over time, many users expressed dissatisfaction with the lack of Canadian data, and that included our own scientists here at Health Canada, because food composition data is crucial to nutrition policy decisions. So the SNAPCAN program is the collection of samples of priority food categories determined by many factors, especially to meet program needs here at Health Canada. So generally, we analyze the nutrient profiles of 2 food categories per year, but it depends on the size of each category. I think this picture here is pretty self-explanatory. So from start to finish, it takes about 2 years to complete the full cycle. I thought I'd show you some pictures of the sampling done in the past years. Our lab in Toronto does most of the sampling, but it really depends on where the products are manufactured and distributed across Canada. Rita and Sabrina do an extensive amount of exploratory work before deciding where they should be picked up. We also have people in British Columbia and the Maritimes to help us when needed. A lot happens behind the scenes, and we love it when the labs send us pictures. So here you have pictures of sample preparation for composites, distribution, storage, and nutrient analyses. The picture on the right here with stacked boxes was sent from the Toronto lab to convince us to get rid of old samples kept in the -80 freezers. Well, it worked, because when we saw how full it was, I remember Rita going through the list and getting rid of some samples. Here I wanted to show you that it's not all well and perfect. This is an explosion of ethnic sauces in the freeze dryer. It took hours for Patrick to clean it up. So each commodity group has its own challenges. What do we need in the future? Well, I don't know where to start. I will be honest and say that we haven't received any IT support since 2008, and I am not exaggerating. Other than nutrients, we haven't been able to add any new fields. Mix and max, common names, Atwater factors, language are just some of what we need. Well, manual data entry has to go. We are in 2022 and we did an import module for all the SnapCan foods. I have done a lot of data entry over the years, and there are more efficient ways to work. When I started as an intern, I was here at Health Canada for 6 weeks, and all I did for 6 weeks, 8 hours a day, was enter nutrients by hand. I had a stack about 2 inches thick, and I just went over it every day. It was not fun. So in an ideal world, we would revamp the CNF online, have a new database structure, publish a new version of the CNF, continue with SnapCan and other internal projects all in the same year. But since we are in a government entity and that I'm not captain of the boat, we do what we can. That being said, Health Canada is working on a new database structure, and we will address later in the presentation. CNF is only one of the food and nutrient databases that needs a renewal. So this is why higher management was convinced to embark on this new project called Cnds, the Canadian Nutrient Data System. Isabelle will talk in detail more about it shortly. So I hope you enjoyed learning about the CNF, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Isabelle Rondeau, and I'm so glad to be here today to present on the nutrition survey system. As you can see by my picture, I'm not quite as photogenic as Marie-France, but I guess we can't all be. To start, a quick overview of what is the nutrition survey system, since it's less known than Canadian Nutrient File, even here in Canada. NSS is used for nutrition surveillance. It is composed of a data entry module. It includes information on foods, recipes, and dietary supplements. The main goal is to convert foods and supplements into energy and nutrients. NSS wasn't the first tool used in nutrition surveillance in Canada. It was the Canadian Dietary Information Software Program, known as CANDI. After the Nutrition Canada survey in 1972, the CNF was developed, but there was also a need for a tool that would facilitate data entry, processing, and analysis of 24-hour recalls. This is how CANDI came about. It was developed by a very innovative research staff at Health Canada. Individual foods, recipes, meals, and multi-day records can be entered and analyzed. At the end of the 1990s, it was time to upgrade our well-loved CANDI to a more modern platform. There was also some worry that CANDI wouldn't make it through Y2K. This was the start of NSS. A lot of the components were based on CANDI. We have the data entry module that allows the entry of different dietary intakes questionnaires and of dietary supplements. Many data quality and validation functions were also built into the application. Data checks are possible for nutrients, portion sizes, and unreported meal details. Another important part of NSS is the recipe module. as the CNF contains many foods, but a limited number of mixed dishes, and these cannot be broken down to the ingredient level, and this is essential to a lot of the work we do. Recipe nutrient profiles are updated automatically when CNF updates a food. For example, if CNF updates an iron value for beef, and if this food is used as an ingredient, the nutrient profile of the recipe is automatically recalculating using the new iron value. Moisture and fat adjustments and nutrient retention factors are applied to our recipes. NSS includes many data sets. Of course, it has foods from the Canadian nutrient file, as well as approximately 3,500 recipes. The majority of the recipes are based on FNDDS, but also many recipes are unique to the Canadian market. NSS also includes foods created specifically for survey needs. As for the supplements, the Health Canada Drug Product Database was used, but this hasn't been updated or used after the provincial nutrition surveys that took place at the end of the 1990s. When has NSS been used in Canada? The data entry module and surveillance database was used in the provincial nutrition surveys in the 1990s. The flags indicate provinces that used NSS, the others used Candy. Many internal research projects also used NSS. As for the 2004 and 2015 Nutrition Canadian Community Health Survey, the NSS surveillance database that includes CNF was used. At this point, other means were used for data entry. The NSS surveillance database is also the foundation of the ASA 24 Canada nutrient dataset. The data collected from the different surveys and research projects listed previously inform many of our nutrition policies, regulations, and guidelines, such as Canada's Food Guide, food fortification and supplemented food policies, the reduction of sodium guidelines, and the ban of partially hydrogenated oils. The data is also used in food safety and health risk assessments. We haven't done any major updates to NSS since our last national survey in 2015, mostly due to an outdated application and lack of IT support. But with a new platform on the horizon, and a little bit more about that later, we are planning to do important updates in the coming years. Here are some of the work we are planning. We will be reviewing all our recipes to see if they should be retained, excluded, or if they can be represented by another food or recipe. We will also update our recipes using the most recent FNDDS. We will look at what recipes have been added, deleted, and what modifications have been done to the ingredients, and we will see if these changes should also be applied to our own database. There is also interest in looking at differences in nutritional composition of foods based on location of preparation. We will be exploring this and adding recipes accordingly. I don't know about you, but I'm always curious to know what are the new and upcoming food trends. When I started working at Health Canada, we would often open one of the new cookbooks and see what was out there. But now we have to do things a little bit differently. And TikTok recipes are a great example of that. Further in the future, we are also really hoping to publish a recipe database, as this has never been done in the past, and we would love to have others be able to use them as well. This part of the presentation will touch on the future of both the Canadian Nutrient File and the Nutrition Survey System, and its new platform, the Canadian Nutrient Database System. And yes, I know, still not as photogenic as Marie-France. As both Marie-France and I have already mentioned, both our database platforms are outdated, not to say very outdated, and we've had no technical support to upgrade our applications in many years. In this way, both teams face very similar issues. On top of our aging databases and applications, we also heavily rely on technical resources for many of our tasks, such as bulk data uploads, reporting, and publishing. Having had no IT support in last years, we are missing key functionalities and fields to be able to do our work appropriately. Another important issue with the way things are presently set up is that a lot of the work requires manual processing. This demands a lot of time, effort, and increases risk of errors. There are definitely more efficient ways of doing things. So what is the solution? We are happy to announce that a new system is being developed, the Canadian Nutrient Database System, which will help improve collection, management, tracking, and analysis of our food nutrient data. Here is a diagram to show you some of the differences between our current and future state. Cnds is a web-based application that will be replacing our outdated Oracle databases and spreadsheets. A little bit embarrassed to admit that we're still using spreadsheets. Cnds includes new features and fields that are greatly needed for our day-to-day work and that will reduce significantly the manual processing. The Canadian Nutrient Database System will replace both the existing Canadian Nutrient File and Nutrition Survey System databases. The NSS data entry module will not be carried over to Cnds as other means have been used in the past years. So exactly what is new in Cnds? It includes advanced search and filter features that give us the ability to search on multiple fields at the same time. An import module was created that permits the import of multiple foods and recipes from different sources. This will help so much in reducing the number of manual data entry we do. New fields were included to hold information on food categorization, such as Canada's Food Guide classification and reference amount categories. International food categories will also be added down the road. We now have the ability to view nutrient information for different serving sizes, not only by 100 grams. For example, we can have the nutrient profile based on the weight of one banana or per a reference amount. We can also see at a quick glance if a food is used as an ingredient in a recipe. And finally, we can customize the data view for exporting and can produce reports directly in the interface instead of always using a BI tool. The integration of data from the CNF and NSS under one unique platform is only the beginning. Here is some of the work that we want to do in the future. We will incorporate food label data to Cnds. This will include nutrition facts table, images, and Nielsen market share. We will also build a module to automate data aggregation of SnapCan analysis data. And finally, a new public-facing platform. To summarize, why are we so excited about Cnds? This new platform integrates all our food nutrient data at one place. It will allow us to increase our ability to update our database with more facility, accuracy, and on a more regular basis. Even with this new platform, there is always challenges that remain when we talk about food composition databases, and we wanted to highlight some of our issues. Limited resources is always a problem. That'd be access to IT support to continue improving our databases, money to analyze more data, or staff to do all the necessary work. Also, priorities are always changing. At one point, it could be sodium, the next, trans fats or sugar. Also, other Health Canada priorities impact our work. The fast-paced food market is so hard to keep up with. It seems like every day a new product is coming out. Reduced sugar yogurt, high-protein milk, the new fruit of the day such as yuzu. We just can't keep up. The majority of the data, both in CNF and NSS, are based on the US, even if we have increased the percentage of Canadian data in the past years. And because of this, we are always dependent of USD updates and decisions. Both food composition data and label data are useful data sets, but the differences between the two are not always well understood, and we often need to justify the need of food composition data. Finally, we do not have regularly scheduled nutrition surveys in Canada. Our last one dates back to 2015. This makes it difficult to identify our needs and requirements with respect to food composition. Marie-France and I can't take all the credit. We work with a great group of people, and we would like to acknowledge them today. They make all of this possible and make it such a great place to work at. It will be our pleasure to answer your questions now, but we are always happy to hear from you, so don't hesitate to contact us at the following emails if you have any questions in the future.
Hello, my name is Natalie Partridge. I am a nutritionist at USDA's Food and Nutrition Service in the Nutrition, Education, Training, and Technical Assistance Division, or NETA. I will be presenting about our work with the Child Nutrition Database on behalf of my colleagues Rebecca McIsaac and Bethany Schowell. Our presentation is titled New Directions for USDA's Child Nutrition Database, Where We Are Now. The objective of this session is to describe the status of the Child Nutrition Database modernization, focusing on the new data collection process from food manufacturers for products marketed and sold to school food service. The Child Nutrition Database is often referred to as the CN Database or CNDB. Let's start with some background information about the CN Database. What is the CN Database? The CN Database is a nutrient database. The CN Database includes foods typically used in grade K through 12 schools. This database is required by regulation to be included in USDA-approved nutrient analysis software for the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program. The nutrient data is used to analyze school meals to ensure they meet the nutrient requirements of the current regulations for school meals. The CN database is administered by the USDA Food and Nutrition Service Nutrition, Education, Training, and Technical Assistance Division, or NETA. The database is currently managed by a contractor. The contractor collects and compiles the data as well as prepares the database in a format for distribution. Currently, the CN database is released annually. The CN database includes the 19 nutrients and food components shown here. Added sugars is new to this year's release. Currently, in the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program, menus must meet requirements for calories, sodium, and saturated fat. For these three, the data must be complete with no missing values. Currently, the CN database is made up of 6 tables. The food description table includes the name and product information, such as the source, category, manufacturer name, and product number. The category name table lists the category name and code number for categories assigned to most foods in the food description table. The Global Product Classification, or GPC, category name table was added to this year's release to accommodate category information received for food items obtained by our new process. The weights table includes the serving size or household measure information along with the gram weight or milliliters for most products in the food description table. The nutrient values table provides nutrient and food component values for the food items on a per 100 gram or per 100 milliliter basis. And last, the nutrient description table is the key for the codes used in the nutrient value table for nutrients and food components. The CN code is the primary key that links the food description, weights, and nutrient values tables. The Child Nutrition Database includes nutrient and food component data from 4 sources. The first source is the USDA National Nutrient Database for Standard Reference, or SR, legacy version. All foods in SR that include the 3 required nutrients of calories, saturated fat, and sodium are included in the CN database. The next set of data is nutrient data for the USDA standardized recipes, which are recipes created by our division, NETA, for use in the school meal programs. NETA staff analyze these recipes using nutrient analysis software. The third set of data is food manufacturers' data for branded food products marketed to school food service. Our new process addresses this source of the data collection. I will talk more about our new process shortly. The last set is products from USDA Foods in Schools program. This program supports domestic nutrition programs and American agricultural producers through the purchase of domestic agricultural products for use in schools participating in the National School Lunch Program. This graphic summarizes the current child nutrition database process. Data from the 4 sources are compiled into the CN database. The CN database is uploaded into nutrient analysis software, specifically those used in the school meal programs. State and local agencies and school program operators use the software to analyze the school menus to ensure meals are meeting the requirements for calories, sodium, and saturated fat. Now I would like to discuss our new process for obtaining manufacturers' data for products marketed and sold to schools for the Child Nutrition Database. First, let's start with a recap of the recent history. In recent years, we identified a need for a better, more streamlined process for manufacturers to provide their data for products for schools for the CN database. We researched options focusing on sources of manufacturers' data for products marketed and sold to schools. In 2020, we began working with members of a Partnership for Public Health, the USDA Global Branded Food Products Database, or the partnership. Most of this audience is familiar with the partnership or some of its members: USDA's Agricultural Research Service, or ARS, University of Maryland, GS1 US, One World Sync, Label Insight, and ILSI North America. We began working with the partnership to utilize their existing process for the Global Branded Food Products Database, or branded foods. We discovered that we needed a way to identify foods intended for school food service. The solution was to add a way to tag or identify the products for the school food service audience submitted to GS1 US. This was accomplished by adding a new trade channel option. A trade channel is a field where manufacturers indicate where the item is intended to be sold, such as grocery or pharmacy. Manufacturers can select more than one trade channel. A new trade channel option called Child Nutrition Food Programs was added to allow for identification of products for our target audience of K through 12 schools. To successfully publish data to the CN database through the branded foods process, manufacturers must submit their data through their data pool provider, such as One World Sync or Syndigo, select the Global Location Number, or GLN, for the Global Branded Food Products Database, or branded foods, and select the trade channel Child Nutrition Food Programs. We worked with the partnership to reach out to the manufacturers that submit products to branded foods to inform them of the new trade channel and how to tag items they sell to school food service. We also reached out to those manufacturers that currently have data in the CN database to inform them of the new process and encourage them to use it. For this year, manufacturers with data currently in the CN database had the choice to submit their data through the branded foods process or use our traditional method of submitting data directly to us. We had to make some changes to the CN database fields and structure to accommodate the data obtained through the branded foods process. A dedicated field for the Global Trade Item Number, or GTIN, was added to the food description table. 2 new fields, brand owner and brand, were added to replace the manufacturer name in the food description table. Added sugars was added to the nutrient value and nutrient description tables because this data is available through the new process and it is a nutrient of interest to the school meal program's audience. As mentioned previously, 2 category name tables will now be provided in the database. Data obtained through the new branded foods process will be assigned to a Global Product Classification, or GPC, category from GS1 GDSN. Other data in the CN database will be assigned to a category from the current category name table. The category name table is based on categories from the National Nutrient Database for standard reference. Changes were also made to accommodate nutrient values per 100 milliliters, like branded foods. The CN database now accepts nutrient values and serving sizes reported in either gram weight or milliliters. All nutrient values in the CN database now are either per 100 grams or per 100 milliliters. Fields added to indicate per unit and type of unit. Per unit was added to the nutrient value table to indicate if data is per 100 grams or per 100 milliliters. Type of unit was added to the weights table to indicate if data is provided in grams or milliliters. Now I would like to review some of the lessons learned, specifically problems encountered and plans for the future. Some data did not make it through the new branded foods process through the CN database. Some data was not captured in the branded foods API. To resolve this, throughout our process this year, fields and search capabilities were enhanced for the API. We continue to work with the partnership to improve the API process and troubleshoot issues. Some data was not successfully published by the manufacturer. Examples of issues include trade channel was not selected, serving size basis, grams or milliliters was not selected, weight for serving size was not entered, data entry warnings were interpreted as requirements, so manufacturer did not continue to publish the data, and differences in data entry displays or playlists between the data pool providers resulting in confusion or some required data being omitted. We plan to create a guide to successful publishing and FAQs for the manufacturers. There was some confusion between two data collections for USDA, between Food Distribution Division's collection for USDA foods and FNS's collection through branded foods for the CN database. Clarification of these data collections will continue through coordinated outreach with Food Distribution Division. Some large companies opted not to submit their data through the branded foods process. We will explore their needs and work with these companies to resolve barriers to using the branded foods process. Towards the end of our data collection cycle, there was insufficient time to resolve some submission problems. We will continue to work with manufacturers over the coming year to resolve issues and achieve successful publication so the data is in branded foods for the next CN database release. We had a total of 34 manufacturers submit data for CN25, which is this year's release. 19 through branded foods only, 6 with a mix of branded foods and our traditional method, and 9 by our traditional method. We hope to increase this number for next year's release by moving those manufacturers to 100% branded foods and through outreach to additional manufacturers. The CN database provided to school program operators via USDA-approved nutrient analysis software is an important and widely used resource. Modernizing related methodology is essential as it plays a critical role in analyzing school meals to ensure they meet the nutrient requirements of child nutrition programs. The GS1 GDSN infrastructure and branded foods process provide a streamlined approach to obtaining up-to-date manufacturers' information for K through 12 food products. We are very excited about the progress we made this year. We will be providing additional outreach and technical support to the manufacturers in the coming months. We plan to completely transition to this new process for next year's data collection for the CN Database Release 26. The CN Database Release 25, or CN25, will be available later this month. To obtain the current release of the CN database, visit the website provided at the bottom of this slide.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Mckillop. I'm the lead of USDA's Food Data Central, and I'm excited to talk to you today about our current and future approaches to food composition data at USDA. Today, I'd like to start with talking about the reasons why before I go into details on Food Data Central. It's the factors that necessitated the change of us launching in 2019, as well as drive the decision-making moving forward. The first is the need for understanding of interrelationships between dietary intake and health is greater than ever. Of course, we want better understanding of food composition and the variability of food composition and its impact on what people are eating, why they're eating it, and what the health outcome is. The rapid evolution of technology and communication. This data set was originated 30 years ago, and things have changed since then when it comes to technology, taking advantage of things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, and being able to disseminate this in a communicative manner. The skyrocketing demand for transparency and easy accessibility to data. What are we doing to make sure that every data point we're recording is a value that we're presenting forward in a clear and usable manner? And understanding that food systems are global and impact food security, the environment, and public health. What are the agricultural practices that are going into growing that are changing food or potentially changing food composition? And how is food composition and the variability of food composition and its specific components potentially impacting human health, whether it be the individual or the health of Americans? And then the rapid changes in the food supply, especially over the past few years with COVID, and understanding that trends change, things change, supply chain, agricultural practices, how people are eating, and being able to keep up with that in a programmatic way. And that resulted in Food Data Central in April of 2019, an integrated data system that provides expanded nutrient profile data and links to related agricultural and experimental research. You can see right up front and center, this is a public resource available at fdc.nal.usda.gov. I invite you all to go check it out after this presentation. And up front and center, we have our Food Data Central food search. And you can, of course, see right here that facilitates you searching the data sets within our data. We highlight that if you just want to get right to the download of the data, you can. Here's a link provided. And then if you're someone who likes to interface with your software, if you have statistical software or you're building an app, we make sure you have access to our API, which gives you access directly to our database to search and query data that's live on our website. And if you go to Food Data Central, you're going to find 5 distinct data types. The first we released in 2019 was foundation foods, data for food components, including nutrients derived from analyses, and metadata for a range of single foods and ingredients, providing insights into variability. More on foundation foods in a little bit. Experimental foods introduced in 2020 as data produced under experimental conditions, such as those derived from an experimental design or new analytical methodology, and aren't necessarily to be used for reference purposes. We have historical data like SR Legacy, standard reference, last released in April 2018 and no longer updated, that has historical data on food components, including nutrients that are derived from analyses, calculations, and published literature. Survey Foods, which is USDA's Food and Nutrient Database for Dietary Studies, or FNDDS, that has data on 65 key food components, including nutrients, with weights for foods and beverages as reported in What We Eat in America Dietary Survey, which is a component of the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, or NHANES. And Branded Foods as a public-private partnership that works to have manufacturers voluntarily provide label data that is both from the US and in some cases some international partners that provides labeled data on foods that you might purchase within that market country. I'm going to talk a little bit about foundation foods for those that are unaware or have not seen a previous presentation on FDC. Foundation foods is a way forward from standard reference that you might have used in the past, where we're moving towards a more individual sample and focused analysis of our foods. We are making sure that we collect extensive metadata on each one of our individual samples, when they were acquired, where they were acquired, do we have additional metadata such as the day that they were harvested or the day that they were first grown. with some more focused analysis, really sort of taking our resources and spending them on the components that we think are scientifically going to give us the best value of data for our resources that we're spending, whether it be looking further into carbohydrate analysis, phytochemicals, or just providing forward an understanding of the variability that might exist in key nutrients within that food. And we're going to be focusing more on raw commodity foods and commodity derived foods, and analysis on what are staples of ingredients moving forward. And so COVID hit when we were analyzing foundation foods in April 2020. It really impacted the amount of foods that we had in FDC and what we were analyzing and how quickly we were able to bring these foods to FDC. In April 2020, we released 13. In October 2020, we had 12. And in April 2021, only 14. Sort of restricted by what we could pick up both in the store and restricted by the number of people we could have in a lab at any one time, sort of subsampling these and sending them out for analysis. I'm happy to say, however, that we have worked on working around these restrictions, increasing throughput, understanding where the pitfalls were to sort of reinforce those areas and make sure we could move forward. So even with the same restrictions in October of 2021, we increased up to 19 foods, and with our release last month, we were up to 27. This is something that we hope to continually increase as we move forward and have a much higher number as we continue to process and release new foundation foods every 6 months. And our first step for this was actually a month ago. We put together this website on FDC that you can get to that talks about upcoming analysis. So this is the first time we've sort of told you what we're currently acquiring and analyzing and what we have planned for the October 22 release later this year. Of course, this is what's planned, isn't necessarily what will be published in October 2022, but will be the majority of what we move forward with this year. We hope to update this list as we have better plans moving forward on meats, poultry, and seafood, as well as continuing our approach towards doing more single commodity and single commodity derived foods and more raw foods as we move forward with our foundation food sampling, including picking up data and metadata and getting a better understanding of where these foods are grown and what agricultural practices are used and what varieties might exist within each one of these items. And if you go to a foundation food profile, in this case, I have up whole grain oat flour. You can see the type of analysis that we're currently doing, what we're highlighting, but you can see an analytical profile here. But what I wanted to highlight first was some of the components that we're analyzing and how we're presenting forward. So I'm going to zoom in here. And this is the same food, just zoomed in. You can see a few things that we've done differently since we've launched in 2019. One is the energy factors. We have decided moving forward that we're providing both Atwater general factors and Atwater specific factors in our calculations moving forward, with those values being provided if you hover over the calculated amount that you see here, and making sure that we potentially start increasing how we do energy factors, including bomb calorimetry analytical results that we hope to have validated and start producing next year, as well as in this case, very interested in carbohydrate research. You can see for this oat flour, we used multiple methodology in sort of determining total dietary fiber. And we included beta-glucan analysis on this particular oat flour. And for each one, you can see that there's an N of 8 samples, and you can see that the samples is clickable. So for each one, you can click and see the methodology. And to show you a view of what that sample layer looks like, I'm going to switch over to a milk item. So this is milk, 2% milk fat with vitamin A and vitamin D added, and I have clicked samples on iodine, which has a minimum on this particular data set of 19.9 micrograms and a maximum of 103 micrograms. You can see when you click on samples, you get every individual measurement, where that sample was acquired, the methodology used, and then that individual value for that sample. In this case, for iodine in 2% milk, you can see the very first result. There is an FDC sample ID of 320026. You can see that that link is clickable. So if I click on that link, that will bring me to more detail. So let me show you that. So here we are on 320026, the individual sample for 2% milk. And you can find every individual analysis for every component that we analyzed for this particular sample, as well as you'll see there is an acquisitions details tab in which you can find out when we acquired the sample, where we acquired it, and any other potential metadata that might be useful in individualizing this sample against the other samples that we collected. Throughout this nutrient data bank conference, there's going to be an even more detailed look on foundation food and variability. We're going to be talking about FNDDS, and you're going to be seeing more on branded foods. So I invite you to go to those presentations and learn more about those data. I wanted to focus some on what you can expect when you go to FDC and some of the features we put forward. Of course, we want you to be able to search our food. We want you to be able to search the components, including nutrients within our food, and make sure that we provide full documentation on those data types and definitions for each one of those fields you might find, and we provide all of that forward. As well as multiple download options, we've always provided forward CSV files, but in this last year, we've also included JSON as an option for downloading and using our data. We have an inventory and update log that we introduced last year, a way of finding out what's new in our website, a page that you can bookmark and go back to and learn, have we updated it since you were last there? And if so, what new features and what new data are available? We continue to update our API accessibility. Again, that's the interface in which someone who is using statistical software can bring in the most recent data of our database, or potentially build their app and interface and pull data and query it within our system, as well as continuing our links to related research data. And we've been consistently updating about every 6 months, at least twice a year in FDC. Right now, we have planned every April and October to have some form of update to Food Data Central that will include new foundation foods and new experimental foods. So you can see here that for every update, we continue to upgrade the features of our website. We continue to add new data and new functionality that we think is relevant for our user base. Continuing from the initial release in 2019 all the way up to this last release last month in April 2022. We find it very important to increase foundation foods, experimental foods every 6 months, generate a new download of the data within our database in JSON and CSV, continue to update our API, continue to expand the metadata that exists in each one of our data sets, specifically foundation foods and branded foods, and make sure that we're keeping everyone up to date on how to use our data and how to interpret our data. So if you go to Food Data Central today and you search for apple, this is what you'll see. Across the top, we have our data types, foundation foods to experimental foods and every other data type in between. It shows you the number of results for your search query. In this case, Apple brought back 6 results for foundation foods and over 22,000 results for branded foods, as well as the fields that are relevant for that particular data type. You can also see at the top of each tab a definition of that data type and a direct link to further documentation. We hope that this sort of informs the user about the differences between each one of these data types and why you might want to use one over the other for your specific need. And in this case, I've drilled down to branded foods, which has over 22,000 results. And you can see that in addition to the definition as we did for the foundation foods, you also see additional search options. In the case of branded foods, there is a market country, United States and New Zealand, with hopefully Canada coming soon, and ingredients and brand owner searches for those that want to sort of filter down the number of results to something more specific that they might be looking for. You might also notice that the results that return are more relevant columns and fields for what you might be looking for in branded foods, such as the brand owner and brand, or the UPC code that you would find on a package. The top left corner next to food search, you can see component search. This is also something you can find in the navigation menu at the top of each page, and it's a way of searching components, including nutrients on FDC. In this case, I've chosen total lipid, I've chosen sorting by 100 unit servings, and chose foundation foods as my data set. This is the result here, giving back information on serving size, the per serving amount, as well as the per 100 amount, with relevant identifiers and definitions on those identifiers, and the ability to download the results on the lower left into CSV. We hope this is a good ranking tool for those who are more interested in a specific component, would like to get a representation of what that component looks like within our data set. And I would like to think that we have unprecedented coverage on Food Data Central, both usage and data within our system. We have 184 foundation foods today. That represents over 2,000 foundation food individual samples. We have 26 experimental foods. That's something that we're hoping to increase more as we move forward in defining experimental foods and what appears on FTC. With almost 400,000 branded food products and over 7,000 survey and 7,000 SR foods that represent well over 6 million individual nutrient values within our data set. And that's just active records. If you include historical records that are still within that data set, you would find even more. Our usage, we have are considered the #1 API usage for a USDA data set on data.gov, with over 3 million calls to our API every month. That also represents over 3 million unique users we've had on the FDC website since its launch in 2019. And an interesting fact is that we have about an even split of 50% of our users being from the United States and 50% being from countries outside of the United States. So we have a very large global perspective of users coming into FDC and using our data. And this is where we're going. You're going to see another iteration of this slide tomorrow during Naomi Fukugawa's discussion, where you're going to get maybe a better understanding of some of the context of the bullet points here. So please go see that. But we're going to be increasing and continue to increase the data within our system, expanding it, expanding the metadata collection efforts and the metadata we collect on our individual samples. We're going to enhance connections to diverse data systems. What that means is standardization. How are we using our names for our foods, and how are we linking to identifiers for foods? How are we naming and identifying our components? And that's something we want to make sure is something that's operable with other data systems, and making sure that we have connections to those diverse data systems. We, of course, want to facilitate the usage of our application as a resource for agriculture, diet, and health research. And that means increasing experimental foods and making sure that they're presented in such a way that it is searchable and useful for our user base. And the last is to foster collaboration amongst public and private entities. This is such projects such as the Periodic Table of Foods initiative, which gets into the omics of foods. This is continuing our relationship with the Branded Food Products Database Partnership, and the Coalition of Food Systems Interest to enhance data innovation at USDA. What are the agricultural practice changes, and how is that affecting food composition in the food systems? Are all projects and things that we want to make sure we facilitate and really drive what brings FDC into the future. Dr. Fukugawa is going to be talking more at length about Food Data Central. What is it and why is it needed today, tomorrow? If you'd like a preview, go check out our publication in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition at the DOI, posted here for more information about foundation foods and experimental foods. And in addition to Dr. Fukugawa's talk and keynote tomorrow, we have a lot of representation of Food Data Central, both directly related and tangentially related, that are going to be presented throughout the Nutrient Data Bank Conference. In addition to Dr. Fukugawa's keynote tomorrow, Alana Moshfegh will be talking about FNDDS. Jim Harnley will be talking about variability in foods, which are specific to foundation foods within FDC. Brianna Larrick is going to be talking about branded foods and specifically the journey to global expansion. I'll be talking later about our graph database. What is it? What does it mean? What are we doing with that? Hyundai Mckillop will be talking about chemical composition data and using the semantic web, which is directly related to some of the projects we have in FDC. And there are a lot of tangentially related projects as well that I can't fit into one slide, but check out presentations from Fearson, Martin, Lee, Ahuja, and Rhodes for other sort of data and data collection efforts that are related tangentially to Food Data Central. And feel free to reach out directly to me for any questions. My email is posted here. There's also a great contact form that I recommend people use at FDC at /contact.html. There's a link on the navigation menu as well. Helps us record the types of questions coming in, and it gets triaged to the correct person to answer your question and give a response within a timely manner. And with that, of course, I'm looking forward to the questions coming in and seeing what I can do to tell you more about FDC. Thank you for your time today.